moments occurred recently on October 31st, 2008. You probably remember that period in time. There was a huge global financial crisis going on, and Americans were defaulting on almost 20% of the mortgages in the country. But in another 20 or 30 years, that financial crisis will be completely forgotten. I know that sounds hard to believe today, but the truth is, that period of time, the fall of 2008, will forever be known as the moment when a new technology emerged that changed absolutely everything about the way money, banking, commerce, and property rights are managed. This technology changes everything about how capitalism is structured. You see, on October 31st, 2008, an anonymous computer scientist laid out in precise detail a new method of linking the power of computers and fiber optic networks to money. He created a kind of money that gains in value in direct relation to the power of computing globally. And everything, absolutely everything, is going to change as a result. If you think technology is leaving most Americans behind already, what's coming next should terrify you, and it terrifies me. The group I call the Digerati, the huge network of Americans who have been developing new technologies for decades and growing ever richer as a result, the Digerati has built their own currency, and it lies completely outside the control of any government. This group and their new money are soon going to leave everyone behind. Every last person in this country and in every other country in the entire world. This breakthrough represents a critically important new way for humans and machines to communicate and to cooperate. And there's no doubt it will result in a radical reset of our entire global financial system. You see, this new wave means an entirely new kind of money and an entirely new kind of ownership structure for virtually every important asset in the world. It's literally a new technological form of capitalism itself. This is much bigger than a simple evolutionary step in technology. It's what they call a hard fork. It's a change that after it happens can never be undone. It's a change that permanently changes entire societies. The thing is, because this change is still in its infancy, many people don't yet understand its potential. They don't see the future impact this breakthrough will bring. But the Digerati, the richest, the most well-connected people in the business world today, they certainly do. Billionaire tech venture capitalist Marc Andreessen, who embodies exactly what the Digerati stand for. Marc Andreessen was the person who first created an internet browser for the public. The company was called Netscape. Marc Andreessen is sort of the high priest of the Digerati. And speaking of this new breakthrough, he said, "The consequences of this breakthrough are hard to overstate. We're quite confident that when we're sitting here in 20 years, we'll be talking about this technology the way we talk about the internet today." Bill Gates, who, as I'm sure you know, was the founder of Microsoft, another leading member of the Digerati, he said something similar in a recent video. Innovations like vaccines and high-yielding crops have changed the future for billions of people. We're on the cusp of another breakthrough innovation. Jack Ma is the founder of China's biggest tech company, Alibaba, and he says this technology could change our world more than people imagine. American broadcaster and filmmaker Max Kaiser, he says that if this technology had been around sooner, the tragedy of 9/11 would have never happened. That's why the richest and most competitive companies in the world are now quietly implementing this new monetary technology, even though it's not making headlines yet in the mainstream press. Amazon began using this in May of 2018. The makers of Budweiser beer quietly began using it in March of last year. Around the same time, Google began using it too. Visa and MasterCard, pretty much the backbone of the global financial system, they were among the first big companies to try out this new technology way back in 2016. And Starbucks first gave it a try in May of 2019. The smartest and richest people and companies in the world are learning everything they can and testing this new technology because it represents a critical way for humans and machines to communicate, cooperate, and do business. But again, because this technology is still in its infancy, most people don't yet fully recognize what's happening. The sad thing is, as the lights go out for so much of America, everyone who has been left behind will turn on each other. And that'll create a global crisis unlike anything the world has ever seen before. It won't be a war of nationalism. It won't be between countries and big armies. The coming conflict will be a war of the digerati. The conflict will be between people who understand how to use this new technology and everyone else who doesn't. And that battle has already begun. Please heed this warning and help others understand it too. This is a seminal moment which will determine your family's fate for years to come. Just like Amazon took over retail, and just like Uber has taken over cabs, digital technology is now taking over our money. It's changing how we use it, save it, spend it, and enter into deals and contracts to earn it, lend it, and invest it. I promise you, in only a few years, governments will discover the majority of the world's economic power has fled to digital money, a form of money that can't be seized, can't be taken by force, and only retains its value where property and privacy are respected. We've known this was coming for years. Back in 1999, Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman explained how it would happen. He wrote, "One thing that's missing, but will soon be developed, is a reliable e-cash, a method whereby on the internet you can transfer funds from A to B without A knowing B or B knowing A. The way I can take a $20 bill and hand it over to you, and you may get that without knowing who I am." Why is this inevitable? Several reasons. First, as I'm sure you probably know, our entire financial system as it exists today is a mirage, based on unlimited paper money and endless credit created by the government. Today, our government prints billions of dollars literally out of thin air. Did you know that again this year, the U.S. government is set to spend another $1 trillion more than it takes in revenue? Even more disturbing, 25% of the government debt issued around the world now has negative interest rates. Negative interest rates, by the way, mean you have to pay the government to lend them your money. In Switzerland, some banks have announced they will begin to charge clients 0.75% per year for large deposits. Yeah, you read that correctly. The banks want you to pay them to hold on to your money. History will look back on this period with disbelief that so many people could have been fooled for so long into thinking that this was a good idea. These distortions in our monetary system have caused prices for our most critical needs, like healthcare, housing, and education, to soar to levels beyond the reach of the middle class. That's why the rich get richer while everyone else falls behind. The rich have access to assets that benefit from all of this money creation, like stocks, real estate, art, and private businesses. Meanwhile, the lights continue to go out for most Americans as they go deeper and deeper into debt, falling farther behind. Today, American companies and families are deeper in debt than ever before in history. Students owe $1.5 trillion in college debt. Americans owe over $1 trillion on our credit cards. We owe more than $1 trillion for car loans. Sure, this current system has been great for the wealthy, but we all know it simply cannot last. The financial promises we've made simply can't be kept much longer. The debts we've accrued, they can't possibly be repaid. Even worse, anyone holding traditional currencies like dollars, euros, or yen is losing wealth every single day. Even if your bank is not yet charging you to hold your money, the worthless currencies issued by today's governments lose roughly half their purchasing power every single decade. Look at this chart. It shows you how quickly your saved dollars lose value over the years. And if all that wasn't bad enough, with the permission of our government, the banks, credit card firms, and other money institutions now get away with ripping off the public at every turn. Banks pay you nothing in interest, yet they charge you $3 or more just to get your own money out of an ATM machine, or $50 to send a bank wire. Credit card companies get away with charging 20% interest on late payments, but if the credit card company allows someone to fraudulently open up a new credit card in your name, they call it identity theft, and it's somehow your fault. Credit card companies charge businesses 2 to 3% of every purchase made. Trust me, many businesses, including mine, will soon never, ever accept a credit card that charges my company 3% of every sale. It should be so obvious to anyone who bothers to take a careful look. Today's entire financial system is corrupt, broken, and simply will not last. The good news is there's a new system of money that's emerging, and it's going to radically change everything about capitalism in the next few years. Believe me, if you miss out on this development, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. Today, nearly every member of the Digerati I know is desperately seeking a way out of our current highly regulated, public, and bankrupt global financial system. They are getting rid of dollars and moving their money into other assets, including not only gold, but also digital tokens and digital currencies like Bitcoin. Now look, I know what you're probably thinking. For years, I was extremely skeptical about Bitcoin too, because I didn't understand the software. But let me show you some things about Bitcoin I can guarantee the general public doesn't understand. Most people watch Bitcoin soar to almost $20,000 per coin, only to fall back to around half that value today. And they have been completely baffled by this huge creation of wealth. It's even been compared to the Dutch tulip mania of the 1600s, when an entire nation was swept into a frenzy, and the price for a single tulip bulb soared to 10 times the annual earnings of a skilled laborer. But it wasn't until I invited a man named Brendan Bloomer to my office that I began to fully grasp what is now happening. Brendan is one of the world's foremost authorities on digital currencies, and he's a leading member of the Digerati. Brendan flew to my office on his private jet, and at the age of 32 is worth hundreds of millions of dollars because of a powerful digital platform he's built. During our conversation, I began to figure it out. At first, it made no sense to me that Bitcoin's computer code could be mined, or that such a system could be devised to link rising computer productivity to the cost of producing these secure blocks of data. But the code, when you finally understand it, is a breakthrough of historic proportions. Like I said, it's the equivalent in computer science to Einstein's theory of relativity in physics. This new technology represents a critically important way for humans and machines to communicate and cooperate. And I'm certain the things I've learned about Bitcoin recently will shock you, even if you think you know a lot about it already, or even if you've never considered buying it before. For one, there's something very important about Bitcoin that even the world's experts haven't figured out yet. You see, most people think that Bitcoin is finite, and they predict that the last Bitcoin will be mined at a certain date in the future around 2140. But they're wrong. Bitcoin isn't finite at all, not in an economically meaningful way. The last Bitcoin will never be mined, no more than the last barrel of oil will ever be pumped out of Texas. I'll explain to you why this matters and why it's such a big deal. And this new understanding of Bitcoin also portends a huge move higher in its price. Bitcoin could soon trade well over $100,000 per coin, and then well over $1 million per coin, all within the next decade or so. Another argument people make is that Bitcoin has no real value, but that is not true at all, because the quality of money matters. How well money serves as a unit of exchange and as a store of value has huge implications in whether or not it will succeed and be adopted. One thing all the critics get wrong about Bitcoin, for example, is that they don't understand why it's the perfect form of money for our digital, computer-driven world. The truth is, Bitcoin will continue to be one of the world's most favored currencies for a very, very long time. And this is not just my theory. You see, unlike most journalists and investors, I'm also a student of economic history. And one of the most powerful forces in economics and human behavior proves this fact over thousands of years. Gresham's law explains what happens throughout history when there are two or more different types of money of different values in an economy, just like the dollar and Bitcoin today. Gresham's law says that inevitably people spend the bad money of lesser value and they hoard the good money as savings because it will be worth much more in the future. Take, for example, the U.S. government's decision to stop using real silver in our coins back in the 1960s. The U.S. government passed the Coinage Act of '65, which eliminated real silver from the production of dimes and quarters. Well, what do you think happened next? Just like Gresham's law described, the bad money, that is the coin without any silver, soon drove all the good money, the coin with silver, out of circulation. People took all the pre-1965 coins out of circulation and have hoarded them away. That's why you almost never find one in daily use today. As Gresham's law says, bad money chases out good. And it's happening again today. All around the world, people are desperately seeking a way out of our highly regulated, public, and bankrupt global financial system. They're getting rid of dollars and moving their money into gold and cryptocurrencies. It's funny. People today make accusations about how Bitcoin and digital currencies are used mainly for criminal activities. But mark my words, in a few years they will be saying the exact opposite. In the very near future, cash will be the only currency for criminals because Bitcoin is pseudonymous. It's not anonymous. What I mean by that is, although your name isn't attached to your Bitcoin account, every Bitcoin transaction is tracked and recorded forever in a permanent record where everyone can see it. That means police and the FBI can track Bitcoin a lot easier than cash, gold, jewelry, or art. The truth is, the dollar, the euro, and all other fiat currencies are the bad money today, while Bitcoin and gold are the good money that savvy individuals are beginning to hoard. In many ways, Bitcoin is the new gold. It's the new way for savvy investors to get their money out of a collapsing fiat world and into something that will hold its value in years to come. Think of it this way. For many centuries, humans, acting in their own best interest, realized that gold had special properties, which made it a perfect form of money. The really special property of gold was that it was both scarce and inexhaustible. Why? Well, because gold isn't consumed. Thus, the stock of gold grows and continues to grow at roughly the same scale as human ingenuity. There's a strong correlation between the total supply of gold and the total installed horsepower in the world. As humans became able to dominate the physical world through motive technology, engines of various types, mining gold grew progressively easier, and thus more and more gold was produced. However, the more people looked for gold, and the more gold was mined, the harder and harder it became to find. So while the total stockpile of gold always grew, the value of each additional ounce remained relatively constant in real terms. And think about how important that is in the global computer network of today. Just like gold kept up with our mechanical abilities in the industrial age to improve horsepower efficiency, Bitcoin will continue to appreciate at the same pace as Moore's Law, which basically says the capability of our computers double every 2 years. No, that increase in value won't happen in a straight line, but over time it will follow that trend. For the internet to reach its full potential, for it to unleash the incredible power of global cooperation on a much, much larger scale, there needs to be a truly stable exchange of value mechanism whose purchasing power won't be massively impacted by the resulting increase to human productivity. But how do you do that? How do you build a measuring stick that won't be impacted by artificial intelligence? Certainly not with the dollar or any other currency that can be printed out of thin air. Even gold is very likely to become cheaper in real terms in the years to come because scientists will eventually figure out how to break the supply barrier by mining asteroids or seawater or some other radical innovation that will be created By increasing computer power. So what can possibly keep pace with the incredible gains in productivity as predicted and has been realized by Moore's law? Well, the answer is Bitcoin. In fact, that's what it was designed to do. Just as gold was the perfect proof of work for the age of ever-increasing locomotive power in the industrial age, Bitcoin is the perfect currency and the best stable proof of work and money for the computer age. The important thing for you to know right now, of course, is this. In the near future, Bitcoin will not be worth the $10,000 to $15,000 range it's trading today. It will be worth at least 10 times that amount. As the billionaire venture capitalist Tim Draper says, Bitcoin is to the dollar as the internet is to paper. Draper says a single Bitcoin will be worth $250,000 as soon as 2022. From here on out, Bitcoin will continue to be one of the world's most favored currencies, and it's going to stay that way for a long time. Another thing few people understand about Bitcoin is that unlike fiat currencies, each Bitcoin is divisible to 8 decimal places. That's 0.0000001. And each fraction of Bitcoin, which is called a Satoshi, is worth about 1/100th of a penny in today's dollars. In other words, even as Bitcoin rises in value, it's still easy and possible for anyone to shift as little or as much money as they want into this digital currency. They can buy or sell individual Satoshis. And here's the really critical point you need to understand. What so many people get wrong about Bitcoin is, because we consider ourselves in our age to be modern, we think we can dictate and predict what has and holds value over time. But we can't. In fact, the exact opposite is true. What has and holds value changes radically as technology develops. Do you know, for example, aluminum was once the most valuable metal in the world, even more valuable than gold. Napoleon famously honored his guests by setting their places with aluminum silverware instead of gold. The Washington Monument's 6-pound aluminum capstone, set in 1884, was seen as the most extravagant finishing touch possible. Aluminum was once so valuable because, despite the fact that it is the most common metal found in our planet's crust, it's usually found bound tightly to other elements. And it wasn't until the late 19th century that scientists figured out a cheap way to isolate it. When they did, prices plummeted 98% between 1880 and the 1930s. The point is, what we consider valuable and what holds its value changes radically with new technological developments. And that's already happening. Did you know that today, an estimated 90% of the younger generation prefers owning digital currencies to gold, according to Bloomberg? You may not like the sound of that, but it's today's reality, and you better get used to it if you hope to protect and grow your money in the future. The vast and ever-growing power of the internet and of cloud computing and of artificial intelligence, these things are going to reshape our world in ways we can't possibly imagine. And it's all going to happen at an ever-increasing pace that's likewise impossible for our brains to grasp. Faster and faster with ever-increasing rates of change. It's just so fast the human mind can't comprehend it. So what will hold its value tomorrow? What will survive? The coming massive, permanent, and lasting deflation of the post-industrial age? Yeah, I believe gold will still be valuable, but it's simply not going to keep pace with Bitcoin, and it hasn't. I haven't even told you the most important part yet. Yes, it's obvious that Bitcoin will supplant both the US dollar and gold as the most desirable form of reserve currency. That's been clear for years. But what really matters is its impact on the world's existing political and economic order. It's these other changes that should really concern you, especially if you decide that you will never buy Bitcoin. The truth is, Bitcoin isn't merely a currency that will compete with the dollar and with gold. What we're talking about here is not just a new form of money, but actually it's a new way of organizing society. It's a new form of capitalism. Let me show you what's happening. The technology behind Bitcoin is a software innovation called blockchain. One way to think about blockchain is that it's like an internet of transactions, as venture capitalist Marc Andreessen described it to the New York Times. For the first time, a way for one internet user to transfer a unique piece of digital property to another internet user, such that the transfer is guaranteed to be safe and secure. Everyone knows that the transfer has taken place, and no one can challenge the legitimacy of the transfer. The consequences of this breakthrough are hard to overstate. It's a way to exchange money or assets between parties with no pre-existing trust. But, and here's the critical thing, instead of being run by a company or a government, it runs on a distributed network of computers. In other words, basically a collection of all the computers that are using it. Bitcoin is a way of keeping score and exchanging value on the blockchain, just like the dollar is a way of keeping score and exchanging value in business and transactions today. And I promise you this, the blockchain is going to transform our financial system. It's already happening, and it cannot be stopped. If you don't believe me, that's fine, but please listen to one of the most powerful people on Wall Street. Blythe Masters built J.P. Morgan's derivatives and commodities desk into a global juggernaut and pioneered the derivatives market. She knows the inner workings of Wall Street better than just about anyone in the world. And today, Masters says, I would take it, the blockchain technology, about as seriously as you should have taken the concept of the internet in the 1990s. It's a big deal, and it's going to change the way our financial world operates. Believe me, the Digerati knows what's coming. Buried deep in one of J.P. Morgan's annual reports, the bank finally admitted it too. Both financial institutions and their non-banking competitors face the risk that payment processing and other services could be disrupted by technologies such as cryptocurrencies that require no intermediation. The blockchain offers the possibility of not only a new form of money, but new ways to simply and safely construct legal contracts and agreements, which will power an incredible revolution in human ingenuity and freedom, allowing people to do things with money that was never possible before. You see, with the invention of the blockchain, there are a huge number of financial innovations just over the horizon. Things like smart contracts and new ways of transferring value around the world. Whole new platforms that enable individuals to connect in new ways that were impossible before the advent of blockchain technologies like Bitcoin. Yes, this is all very new, and it's changing incredibly fast. But the truth is, all of this stuff was predicted by a Nobel Prize-winning economist many, many years ago. I told you about one Nobel Prize-winning economist already, Milton Friedman. He predicted the concept of Bitcoin back in 1999. But Friedman is not the only Nobel Prize-winning economist to predict this incredible shift now happening in our economy. Ronald Coase